an affordable way to make your land work for you, even if it's just a few acres. Today, I'm going to show you one way landowners are earning extra income in a way that most people probably have never thought about. So here's what we'll cover on today's live stream. First, I'll start with quick updates on what properties we have sold and have on hold. Then I'll show you our deal of the day, so a property that might be exactly what some of you are looking for. And after that, we'll dive into the big topic. This is part of a long series I'll be doing on how to make money through land. And then, if you stick around until the end, I have a special gift for anyone who is watching this live stream. And of course, throughout, for anyone who's live, I'll be checking the chat to see if there are any questions, so feel free to ask questions and just talk to me as we go through the live stream. Okay, so before I get into the meat of today's session, let me quickly update you on what's happening with our land deals. This is how I keep the lights on and how I keep coming back day after day, since I will be here doing a live stream every day at 2 p.m. Eastern, provided something doesn't come up, something major. So quickly, who am I? If you're not familiar with me, my name is Erica. I have a company called Gokche Capital, and I buy and sell vacant land. Our website is gokchecapital.com. And to find all of our listings, you can click on Buy Land at the top of the website. You'll see a map. We do have land throughout the U.S. We're constantly getting new properties in new areas. So always keep an eye out on this map if you are actively in the market for land. And like I said, we do have a fair amount of activity. Right now we have 51 available properties. So I just want to show you where people are buying and looking at the moment. So we did have one of our 2 New York properties recently go on hold. This one is 2.6 acres in Oswego County. For reference, these are northern New York properties. I really do like upstate New York. I find it beautiful. My dad's actually from the Buffalo region, so I'm very familiar with upstate New York. But for anyone who's interested in New York, even though this one property went on hold, we do have another one that's 1.4 acres in Oneida County. And while I'm going through these updates, I also just want to note that when I say on hold, I call out the on hold because we sell the bulk of our properties as for sale by owner. So I'm not a real estate agent. I sell properties, only properties that my company owns. And the bulk of them we are selling ourselves. We're doing our own marketing. It's not through a realtor. What that means is that when you go to our website, you can actually put any one of these properties on hold. So that means you can take it off market for a few days, up to 8 days at a time, while you do your research. It's a very minimal hold fee, and that hold fee is credited toward the purchase price if you decide to move forward with the purchase. And you can just tell whether a property is for sale by owner or not. Here in the status bar, it'll say listed with realtor if it does happen to be listed with a realtor, and it'll just say available if it is for sale by owner. The last thing I'll say is all of the properties that are for sale by owner do come with owner financing. I'll go into that on our deal of the day. So just quickly on activity, we have a lot of properties in North Carolina. You can see here, it's a very popular state right now, a place that still has a lot of affordable land, a lot of land that's also good for mobile homes, which is a good affordable starting point for many people who are looking to get out of renting and finally own their own home. And we just sold a property in Warren County, North Carolina. That's now up here in our pending sale list. So North Carolina, of course, is moving as well. And we have had a lot of interest in our Luna County lots, which I'm going to highlight today. We got a set of 4 half-acre lots in Luna County, and 2 of them have already sold. We just brought these to market, and 2 have already sold, and I'll show you why when we go over one of them, which leads us to our next segment. Actually, I already covered available listings, so that leads us to our deal of the day. Okay. Now let's go back down to Luna County. So as a brief summary, this is half an acre. It was one of a package of 4 half-acre lots. 2 have already sold, so they're going quickly, but there is another half-acre lot that can be purchased at the same time as this one to give you a full acre. And we are in southern New Mexico. And let me give you a brief overview of who this property is and isn't for. Now, as you can see, and I do also just want to call out, we recently got the drone video for this. So I'll have that going. There'll be updated photos soon. But as you can see, this is a rural lot. It is half an acre, which is pretty large, but a little bit small for a rural area like this. So I will say, if you are someone who is looking for a lot with all utilities available, this would not be for you. Who it is for is someone who is looking for something rural, private, and most importantly, affordable. And who is looking for a property with beautiful desert views in an area that has yet to be fully developed, so where those views have not yet been altered by human development. It is also for someone who is looking for an affordable entry into land ownership, because the price of this property is under $2,000. That's under $2,000 plus the $595 dock fee all in. And again, we also offer owner financing to make this even more affordable. So this would be a nice option for anyone who would like to finally own some property. Maybe you want to hold on to it and have it as a gift for your children. Or maybe you're someone who really likes the desert. I'm personally one of those people. I love the desert. I find it beautiful. My mom is from Arizona. So this could be for someone who, because RVs are actually allowed here, not for full-time living, but you can camp in an RV. So someone who's looking for really out-of-the-way camping, where you truly get to see the desert sky, or someone who just wants to be a good steward of some of this beautiful country. So, like I said, we do also offer owner financing. We do tailor those terms to the buyer. We don't have set terms, but since we are offering the financing, that means that you don't have all the requirements you do with the bank. All you do is call us up, tell us what kind of down payment and monthly payment you can afford, and we'll work with you to make the financing meet your budget. We don't have a set credit requirement, so that's good as well. If your credit is a little bit less than ideal, that is fine. And we do have no prepayment penalty as well. So the interest, we also don't have a set interest rate. It's going to vary based on your down payment that you're able to make. But because there's no prepayment penalty, you can always pay off early and save on interest. The other nice thing is we do have a 365-day land exchange guarantee. Oh, and I haven't mentioned this in previous live streams, but it's always a good idea to scroll all the way down through our listing pages, because you might miss some great things here, as well as additional FAQs, a lot of important information about how owner financing works in the FAQs, which are down past all of our testimonials. So yeah, just check out the whole listing page. But we do offer a 365-day land exchange guarantee, which means that in the first year that you're financing with us, as long as you have been up to date on your payments, you do have the opportunity to switch to a different property if you find one that works better for you. So that way you have some security that you will be getting a property that ultimately will meet your requirements and help you achieve your goals, whether that's building a home or finding a beautiful recreational property or just having something that is a legacy that you can hold on to and pass on. I haven't called this out before, but I should because we put a lot of effort into this. So I do want to note that anytime you purchase a property from us for one of our for sale by owner properties, you do get a bunch of bonuses that we put together as a way to try and help our land buyers be successful with their purchases. So we do have monthly landowner Q&A calls. We have a couple complimentary vouchers that can help reduce the cost of, if you are not local to the property, of going out and visiting it. So there's a vacation voucher, a hotel savings card. One thing I haven't mentioned before is I did train in architecture. So for those who are interested, I can offer a 30-minute architectural consultation. And then we have some guides too that are designed to help you be successful once the deed is in your name. So homesteading guide, building and zoning guide, and post-closing checklist. So I just want to call out all those out as what you get when you purchase with us. Okay. So now let's get into the nuts and bolts, or the main part of this live stream, which is another segment on an ongoing series I'll do on ways that you can make money from land without developing it, or at least without building a house. And today, I'm following up from last live stream, not yesterday, because unfortunately I had to miss it, but Saturday, we were talking about beekeeping. So before I start, for anyone who's here live, just have a question. How much honey do you think one bee can make in its lifetime? I'd be curious what everyone thinks. We'll see at the end when we get to the fact of the day who guessed closest to the right answer. But to start, I do want to say that in this live stream, I want to make this fairly practical, so just the nuts and bolts of how to get started and set up your first hive. I'm still waiting on why there are no bee kings. I guess I can continue that into a third segment, see why there are no bee kings. But okay, so you have a vacant parcel of land. How do you get started initially? So today we're going to go over the first 5 gallons worth of honey. Wow. Okay, we'll see if you're close. In the first year, what do you do to get set up? That's the scope here. The first question, of course, is hive location. One of the biggest beginner mistakes is sticking a hive anywhere without thinking about sun, wind, or space. Bees actually need a good orientation. They are like humans, they like to be warm, and when they get up in the morning, they want to feel warm. So since we're talking about the US generally right now, we are talking about a south or southwest facing hive. So you can make sure your bees are nice and warm when they wake up in the morning. And you also want to have good clearance around the hive to give you space as you're walking around. As we all know, bees can be, they do have stingers, right? So you want to make sure that you have enough space to walk around and give the bees space if they become aggressive. Okay. If you have multiple hives, you want them to be level and side by side and slightly tilted forward for drainage. But keep them about 2 to 3 feet apart with 3 to 4 feet behind you so you can work on them. And you do actually want a fence or shrubs nearby. This encourages bees to fly up as opposed to at people, right? And we have another guess. So our first guess on honey production was 1 bee can make 5 gallons. The second guess was 1 hive can make 5 gallons. So we'll see. In terms of what goes into a hive itself, you will start with something called a nuke, which is a nucleus hive. You purchase it from a company. There are many companies. Hi, Zaphael, good to see you again. If you didn't hear, during this live stream, we're trying to guess how much honey 1 bee can produce in its lifespan, if you want to make a guess. So many companies will sell these. It's a small starter hive, so it has a few frames, your starter bees, and then it'll have 1 queen who either comes in a little cage or comes marked. And you will have to transfer this nuke to your starting hive. And let me see if this website gives you a picture of the hives. You can see what they look like here. The most common type of commercial hive is called a Langstroth hive. They basically look like stackable boxes, as you can see here. And let's see if I can get a better picture of this. You did. There you can see some pictures here. They're stackable boxes. So it's a modular system, which means that as your colony grows, you can add more to the top. But you'd start out with like 2 brood boxes like this, and then eventually you'll stack on honey boxes as well. So the deeper boxes are the brood boxes where the bees will actually be laying the eggs and living, and then the smaller shallow boxes like these are where they store honey. So you'll add more onto those as your hive grows. And with the nuke, you will transfer your bees into one of your first boxes, which is actually not as difficult as it sounds. I believe there's a video on how to do this. I had it and I accidentally closed out of it. But here we go, transferring. So you can see here's a nuke. This is what all your bees come in. Then you basically just shake the bees into your actual hive box, being careful that you don't damage the queen, and you'll want a smoker. I don't know if anyone knows why a smoker is important. It does calm the bees down, but does anyone know why a smoker does that? Smoker, by the way, is a can that produces smoke, as the name would suggest. If there are any guesses on that? But you smoke the bees, it doesn't harm them, but it makes them less aggressive and less likely to sting you. You pick up each of these starter combs, you shake the bees into your new box, and then you put your combs into the box. All the while, you want to do this carefully so you don't damage the queen. If the queen comes in her own cage, you open that little cage, you put in like a sugar treat so that the bees identify her with a treat and they get used to her pheromones. And then when the treat is eaten, she can come out and be in the hive. And it's a pretty simple transfer process, provided you're not afraid of the bees, which I probably would be. I am not a beekeeper myself. So the reason bees are calmed by smoke is it makes them think that there's a wildfire in their area. So they are no longer thinking about defending the colony. They're prepared to move. The next question is about forage. So one question we had on the last live stream is, are bees able to live in the desert? And they can. The short answer is yes. Bees live in just about every ecosystem, provided there is enough forage in the area. And here's a good, there are many resources out there, but as you're thinking about whether your land can actually support your bees or not, it's good to pull up a map like this and look at what forage is available in your region. So since we were talking about the Southwest, I'll pull up the Southwest. And we can see that there are actually a number of forage species that will grow. Forage are the flowers whose nectar and pollen the bees eat. There are a number of forage species that do grow even in the desert. So you can see some of the examples here. So you want to make sure that bees, here's another question. Does anyone know, and how will you recognize the queen from other laborer bees? Well, in your initial colony, she'll either be in a cage or she'll be marked. But a queen bee is a little bit bigger. So you see, here's a good picture. She's a little bit bigger from a standard bee, and she has a longer abdomen. So that's how you'll recognize her. But yeah, I mean, she can be kind of hard to find unless she's not marked. And I guess this is another question I didn't know the answer to, but does anyone know what the difference is between a standard bee and a queen bee? Or another question would be, how many different kinds of bees do you think there are in a hive? I'll see if anyone has any thoughts on that. So anyway, well, we are thinking about that. Bees forage about 2 to 3 miles, a 2 to 3 mile radius from their hive. So when you're thinking about whether there's enough forage in your area, you're thinking about a 2 to 3 mile radius. If you have a larger parcel of land, that could mean that all the forage will be coming from your property itself. And Zaphiel is correct. There are 3 kinds of bees: queen, worker, and drone. Queen is the laying female. She lays all the eggs in the hive. Workers are also female, but they are not reproducing. They just do all the work. And drones are the male bees. So the majority of bees in a hive are going to be worker bees. And the difference, what produces a worker bee versus a queen bee is their diet. Bees, so the honey is produced from the nectar of flowers, but bees also, when they are very young, eat pollen, which is a larger source of protein. So a queen will get more of what's called royal jelly, which has the pollen and the protein in it. Workers get less of that while they're growing. Okay, so you want to make sure there's enough forage within a 2 or 3 mile radius of the hive. With ants, I think it's the same. I didn't look up ants, but now I'm going to have to look that up and see if ants are the same. I'm guessing it's a similar system too, but I will have to research that and see, because now I'm curious. So if you have a relatively large parcel of land, you can produce all the forage your bees will need on your property itself. So, you can look through the property, see if it has the forage species native to your region. If not, you can go ahead and grow some. And when you're starting out, you can also supplement feed the bees. Now, a beehive is not going to be able to live wholly on supplemental food, but if there are periods where there's not enough natural forage in the area, so like if you're in a northern climate, you often do supplemental food to get them through the winter. You'll often do supplemental food while you're establishing a hive. And supplemental food is essentially like sugar water. But they also have little pollen packets that you can get. which provide the pollen that the bees will need to produce young. But you do need to have some forage, sufficient forage in the area, because a hive cannot exist solely on supplemental food. I guess it would be kind of the equivalent of us trying to live purely on candy bars. It's not gonna produce a healthy population. So each hive does need access to adequate nectar and pollen sources throughout the growing season. But just for reference, and a strong colony can visit 50 to 100 million flowers per day. But just for reference, about 1 acre of clover in bloom can support several hives. So you don't need that much space. You don't, but if you're in an area with no flowering plants, you'll want to produce those on your land yourself to make sure your hive has sufficient food. The typical bee magnets that we think of as the primary food sources are clover, goldenrod, coneflower, bee balm, and fruit trees. But it is also important to note that when we're talking about bees, there are actually multiple species of bees. Most people are raising honeybees, which are just a few select species. And the nice thing about honeybees is they're generalists. So they will go to many different flower species for pollen and nectar. But you might also raise bees because I think, as a lot of people have heard, we have a pollinator crisis right now. So something like 35 to 40% of plants require pollinators, not just bees, also butterflies, but species like bees in order to reproduce. And a lot of our fruit and I believe also certain vegetables, a lot of the plants that we rely on for food require pollinators. So many farmers want beekeepers. They will rent out beekeepers' bees for their pollinating services because our native pollinator populations are crashing. So people will also raise native bees, which may not produce honey to the same extent as honeybees, but they can rent those bees out for pollinating services. And some people just like to grow pollinator bees, native bees, as a hobby because they want to support the native ecosystem or local farmers and try to bring the pollinators back. Because it's not that large of a, it doesn't take that much time to raise and keep bees. All right, so in your first year, how do you manage your hive? So here is colony progression chart. And this kind of gives away the answer, but what do you think the biggest issue is with bees in the first year? Or what is the thing that is going to prevent success or kill your hive? And the answer is here. But I'll give everyone a second to think about that. But yeah, so once you've determined that you have sufficient food sources, you have your hive, you've transferred your nuke into your hive box. Now you've got to keep your first hive. Ideally, you'd be starting with 2 hives so you have a backup, but you have to keep your first 2 hives alive through year 1. And the 2 biggest issues in year 1 are, 1, not feeding them enough early enough, and 2, probably the biggest issue that never really goes away is controlling for mites, varroa mites. They are a big issue, and winter in northern climates is a big issue, but it is actually mites. They are the most common cause of hive failure. And they make the bees very weak, so then the bees will actually die of starvation. So the first thing you need to do is generally you want to supplement their feed while the hive is establishing by feeding them sugar water in the early weeks especially because you'll be getting your hive started before a lot of the flowers have started blooming. So there might not be a lot of forage yet. Feed them sugar water to make sure that they have enough food. What's Varroa? Let's see an image of a Varroa. Let's see an image of this guy. Very handsome insect. They're mites, they're parasites that feed off of honeybees or bees in general. They're one of the reasons why we have a crash in bee populations. And they make bees very sick. So they're unable to collect enough honey and keep the hive strong. All right, so starting out, you want to feed them supplemental sugar water, and then you want to watch out for Varroa mites. That's one of the biggest things you got to do generally the entire time you're keeping bees, but especially in the first year. So you test for mites using something called a sugar roll test or an alcohol wash. And here's some images of starting out. Smoker. I'm not sure if they have an image of the test, but basically, and here's a supplemental feed. You just put the sugar water in the glass, poke some holes in it, and put it over the top so they have. But you would take about 300 bees in a jar, add some powdered sugar, and shake it gently for a few minutes. The mites will fall off the bees with the shaking, and then the sugar gives you a white surface so you can count how many mites fall out while you're shaking the jar. And the general threshold is if you have more than 3 mites for every 100 bees in the test, you're going to need to treat the hive for mites. A more accurate test is called an alcohol wash, which is a similar process, but you use rubbing alcohol instead of sugar. The alcohol dislodges the mites more effectively, so the results are more precise, but you're going to kill off the bees that you're using in the test. But those are the 2 test options. And if it's determined that you need to treat the bees, there are a couple different solutions that are used. One is an acid vaporization or dribble. And you treat based on counts again. The treatment will vary depending on the season. Warm seasons, and I should also note that warm seasons are the prime season for mites, so you're going to want to test more often in warm seasons than in cold seasons. But the most common beginner treatment is it's inexpensive and highly effective oxalic acid. Okay, I'm going too deep. Well, yeah. All right, long and short of it, there is a treatment for mites. I've been told I'm going too deep, so I will stop there. Just say that basically once you have determined that your brood is healthy, you don't have mites, there's enough forage, they're growing, then you add more boxes to the hive as your frames fill up. And eventually they will start producing honey, and you can collect it from the collector boxes. And over time, ideally, you expand your number of hives. The more hives you have, the more honey you produce, the more you can sell. So this leads us to our question of the day, fun fact. How much honey do you think one bee can produce in its lifetime? And someone cheated, but it is about a teaspoon, like a teaspoon and a half. So next time you are putting some honey in your food or tea or coffee or whatever, think about how many bees had to work their whole lives in order to supply us with our delicious honey. And no, I'm not a beekeeper. I just like to do research. And I'm very interested in ways that land can be used that both want to be. Yeah, maybe I will start beekeeping now. It does seem like. The only thing is, with young daughters, I don't want them to get stung every time they go outside. Yeah, I'm also interested in ways that people can make money from land without having to spend a lot of upfront money, because development is kind of prohibitively expensive for many landowners. And the nice thing about beekeeping in particular is that it is a way that you can help your local farmers, your local ecosystem. You can also make your own land stronger and healthier and prettier without putting in too much work or too much money. And do bees sting their owners? Well, not if you know how to handle them, but that's one reason why you use a smoker, is it calms them down. So you can see there are a lot of videos of beekeepers who are handling their bees even without the protective equipment, because they know how, and then the smoke also calms the bees down. But yeah, if you know how to handle bees, you're actually not at that great a risk of being stung. Okay, so I then am going to leave with our free gift. We actually have 2 free gifts on this live stream. One is I went over our deal of the day, our half-acre Luna County lot. The first free gift is a discount code for everyone. I like to smoke as well. A free gift for everyone watching this live stream. You can get $150 off any of our New Mexico properties. We do have a couple in New Mexico. And as I showed, beekeeping will work in New Mexico. It is the desert, but bees can survive here as well. So if you want $150 off, we have a discount code that is valid until midnight tonight. That code is LiveNM150. I'll put it in the chat here. And then our other gift is our guide on 17 simple ways to generate income from land that doesn't require development, or at least doesn't require you to build a house. So the link to this, as well as the link to our main listing page, will be in the description and the pinned comments. And then tomorrow I'll be back to continue the series on how to make money from vacant land. Zaphael, it was great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining all of these live streams. And I hope to see everyone tomorrow.